She is the CEO of a successful consulting business. She started her education with a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture in India before becoming an applied sociologist. Her clients include the National Science Foundation, the US Department of Education, the US Department of Agriculture, NASA, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Defense. She brings over 18 years of experience in the areas of survey research, health communication research, education research, and program evaluation. Her team has completed 285 technical reports to date. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our guest for today, Dr. Kavita Metapalli.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Anne. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to be a guest. I look forward to our conversation today. So just a little bit of housekeeping. I see people have already started to indicate where they're from. Thank you. If you could use the chat just to say where you're from, this will give us an idea of the global representation, so to say. Now, we have just an hour, and feel free to type your questions in the chat box. Please do not wait until the end to have the questions. This is an interactive webinar. We're not presenting. We're having an informal discussion. So as the questions come to you, feel free to jot them in the chat. Thanks. So right out the gate, Kavita, right out the gate. How do people get jobs or get consultancy gigs in evaluation?
Of course. Well, yeah, great question. And well, yes, that has been a question on my mind and also on several of the people who have contacted me over the years through emails and text messages. And I myself have been in the situation, well, how do I get my first evaluation job? I have a bachelor's, I have a master's. Now, what do I do? Who is going to hire me, right? At least in the US, where I've been trained as a researcher and evaluator, I think my first place was to get associated with the evaluation organizations. There are several of those. The national one is the American Evaluation Association. In addition, there are also local chapters for evaluation. So the idea is not only to get associated, to build a sense of community and to belong, but also learn from the members, also learn from the expertise. And sometimes the jobs just are advertised on these websites. So that's one place to get associated with. The other that I have personally benefited greatly when I was in grad school getting my master's, I had no experience whatsoever in research and or evaluation field, was to work as an apprentice, as an intern, paid or unpaid, to get to work in organizations which will hire intern, they will also train intern. That is a fantastic way of building a resume and also making contacts. In most of the bigger organizations that hire interns and apprentices, they will hire you upon completion of your internship period, and they will probably give you a part-time or full-time job. And that's how I got into the field. And sometimes, you could just, get in touch with some of the consultants through the networks and ask them if they need a data analyst, or maybe they want somebody who can look at their grants, do some writing, help them with the proposals. So that's how I think you have to make inroads into the process of consulting, learning the business, interacting with people, establishing relationships, and then go from there.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks. It sounds similar to my approach as well, what has worked for me. My journey is a little bit different. I didn't start with like an internship. I started from a paid job. And then when I branched into the freelancing, I had already built relationships with persons from when I was working. And then they already knew of me. I had a name. And then when they heard, okay, Annie's not working for herself, then it became easier for me. And a lot of the jobs that I get these days, it's referrals. So it's repeat work, so to speak. And if a client don't necessarily have any additional job for me, they refer me, they recommend me for something
Exactly.
else, right? I see a question
Exactly.
coming in here from Tarniet. How do you manage with having limited financial resources or no institutional support because you're a freelance consultant? For example, with the cost of joining a professional organization, purchasing software and licenses needed for projects. Great question. How do you manage when you don't have money to be signing up and going to all these conferences?
No, that's a great question. And I'm sure, and you also have your own experiences to talk because we've all, both of us at least, we have really begun from, bottom down. I mean, we had nothing. Especially when I came to the United States, I had nothing, not even $100. So there are different ways. Now that I'm a little bit more experienced and maybe a little bold, I just tell upfront to whoever is giving me some work that, look, I'd be happy to help you. I'd be happy to do X, Y, and Z for you, but I have a limitation of having no budget, no nothing.
Mhm.
Are you able to pay me a stipend?
Yeah.
And you will be surprised. I mean, you will be surprised that there will be many people who would say, why not? You are a student, you don't have much to begin with, and you're helping, you're giving us your time and effort. Maybe we can give $100, maybe we can give $500. And that has happened in reality. So no harm in asking and telling them the truth. This is my situation. And in some cases, I would say if you have an option of a paid versus an unpaid internship or opportunity, apply for the paid one first because you know that your work is appreciated, your time is appreciated. And unpaid also sometimes they will pay you in kind. If they're not able to pay you in money because some of the nonprofit organizations they don't have much budgeted to begin with, but they want to give you rich experience, ask and explore those options. And you'll be surprised that there will be always ways where you can actually carve out some kind of income out of this.
I totally agree. That has been my experience as well. I mean, you can always just approach persons and you'll be surprised at how open people are to work with your situation if you don't have the financial
Yeah.
resources right away. And I see another question coming in, and it is this person wants to open their own consultancy firm. Do you have any tips on how to get your first client?
So the question back to the person who put this question, a great question, obviously, is where are you located? Then I can probably situate my response a little bit.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
in my case, my first client, as I said, I was coming from paid employment. So my
Yeah.
first client was actually persons that I worked with already while on the job. So they
There you
knew
go.
that Anne is now doing her own thing. So my name was kind of out there already.
Right.
I
Right.
remember the anxiety I had. Not the first time I wasn't working for a salary, is that will I be good enough? Right? To be
Exactly. Right.
worth what they're paying me. But as I say, once you take the leap and once you get the first client, that is all it takes. The first client, the
Exactly.
second and the third will come.
Right.
While the person answers your follow-up question, here's a good one. Can an
Yeah.
employee see consultancies an offside job in M&E at the same time? Or
Ah,
do I need to leave employment to do this?
excellent, excellent. Yes, so this is an interesting question. And I think most of us who are trained and who are very good with data, it's very hard to say no to the side jobs that keep coming. And we're like, oh, this is great. We can do this. Oh, we can do the data visualization for this. We can do this. Now, here's the trick. Having burned our fingers a couple of times and having been warned, I would say look into your contract that you have with your current employer. Make sure that there is no clause of conflict of interest. That's really critical for you.
Mhm.
If there is a clause, you can still go and talk to your employer and say, well, hey, look, I have this side gig opportunity. This is the nature of the work. This is how I'm planning to go ahead with it. What are your opinions? What do you suggest? Is it okay to do this? Is it not okay to do this? In most parts, you would say, again, it depends on the employer. If the employer is doing only monitoring work and there is no data work related, or they're doing something that is completely tangential to your own sector. For instance, they are in public health and you're in education only, and you are interested in education only, and the side gig is related to education, then you can still negotiate. So always don't assume that, since it's not in the contract, it's okay, or if it's in the contract, it's not okay. Go ahead, talk, negotiate the terms, and you'll be surprised that, again, there'll be people who'll be open to it, and you'll be surprised that maybe the employer has a side business going on.
I have a confession.
Yes.
I was actually fired from a
Oh,
job.
wow.
I was fired because
Mm,
I was doing consultancy. I had not read the fine print of my contract
yeah,
that spoke
yeah,
about conflict of interest. And
right.
all I did, I think I just did a 1-day workshop, long time ago.
Oh, wow.
And my
Yeah,
employer took that 1-day workshop and said, oh, this is actually a breach of the
yeah,
contract. So, guys, I would say read your contract, your employment contract very carefully. Do not do any side hustle or any consultancies while you're still employed without the permission of your employer, right? And with that said, I would advocate, well, personally for me, I would not maybe work somewhere with an employer that is not open for me to supplement my income in other ways or to promote my brand. Suffice to
yes,
say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me in my professional life was getting fired. Because then I didn't have to undercover do my 1-day workshop.
right,
I was
right.
free as a bird to pursue my consultancy and I was not held back. And I have seen people who have flourished as well while in paid employment, people who can actively post on LinkedIn, actively promote themselves on social media while in a job. Usually they
Yeah,
have an employer who is facilitative of that. And you know what happens? It makes it easier. Even if you don't want to go into consultancy, once you leave that employer, it's easier for you to even get another job because your
yeah,
brand is already out there. People see you on LinkedIn, people see you in social media, people see you at the network, so at conferences and so forth. So I would say to anybody, even if you're not planning to go into consultancy, perhaps work for someone, a company that is open to you doing other engagements. It doesn't have to be a consultancy, it can be a speaking gig. Some employers
hmm,
don't even allow you to even present at a conference
yeah,
if you're not presenting on their behalf. I would
yeah.
say get away from that organization as quickly as possible. Anyhow, let me just move to the next question. But I learned the hard way, Kavita. All right.
Yes.
So Naomi asked, do you think it's easier to find work or win contracts by joining a consulting firm or a collective of consultants than going it alone? What are the pros and cons of both approaches?
So the short answer is it depends. So I'll give you an example. If you are working for a very large consulting firm already, and say for 4 or 5 years, or maybe 2 years, and you have established a relationship with some clients. For instance, if you're working with an organization that caters to schools or school districts, then your clients are your school districts. Over a period of time, you would have established a great relationship with them, and you may want to do work separately for the school. Once you leave that big organization, you may want to again go back to your contract to see the conflict of interest. How long do you have that NDA, the non-disclosure or the conflict of interest? In my experience, usually it's 2 years. So if you leave your current organization, say on January 1st of 2021, until 2023, you're not allowed to contact and do business with the clients of that organization. But those terms can be negotiable. I have done that. When I said that 2 years is too much for me because I'm a small business, maybe 1 year works for me, or maybe 6 months. That's number one. And the second part of the question, what was the second part? Oh, in terms of subcontracting and working, yeah. Um, it has worked well for me in some instances, and in some instances, it was a really bad idea. I'll tell you why. the whole concept of consulting, really, anyone would agree and would like wholeheartedly agree, is relationships. After the relationship is also the quality of work and the way you work and the way you expect your subcontractors and consultants to work and deliver. If you hire somebody, my terms of agreement are that if I hire somebody, I give them full authority. I empower them to do the work as I want them to, as if it is their own client. I don't want to micromanage. I don't want to be on their head, breathing down their neck, saying, when are you going to do this? When is this due? When are you going to do this? That's not my way of working. But what happens is that if you get high quality people who are willing to take on the project and do the work and be done, and you're just supervising them and checking in, it works well. At the same time, if they have their own side gig going on and they're just doing a little bit of work for you, then it may not work for you. Then going back to expertise, if you hire a highly qualified M&E person who knows the field, and you don't have to kind of educate them about research methods, about developing a logic model, about a theory of action, doing analysis, then it becomes a big headache when you're trying to train them, because that's not your job. You expect them to come already prepared. So all in all, what I'm trying to say is really depends on your situation, the needs, and also the expertise of the person who's trying to help you.
Okay.
And these things develop over a period of time. I mean, in the 14, 15 years of business, I have engaged several consultants. At the end of the day, I probably have only 3 or 4 really good consultants that I can rely on. I can pick up the phone and say, hey, I have this project, will you help me? And I also know what the strengths are. If you don't know what the strengths are and you're just doing a cold call, again, it's going to be shooting in the dark. You don't know who you're going to get. And ultimately, who is going to suffer? You are going to suffer because you're going to lose a client.
Okay. All fantastic. Right? Had the pros and cons of joining a consulting firm or going it alone. I mean, the pros is if you go with a firm, there are different skill sets on the team.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to have all the skill set. If you're working on evaluation and you know that maybe the quantitative methods is not your strong point, when you're working with a firm and there's a team, you have someone who would maybe have the statistical strength then, while you can focus on maybe the qualitative methods. So that's a pro. Also, on a team, the consulting firm, they usually have teams to help write the proposals, write different sections of the evaluation report. You have someone to proofread it. You have the quality assurance. So you have much more support. That's the pros. The cons could be that sometimes you don't have as much control and flexibility to maybe bring your way of doing things and even negotiating with the client. So that can be a con. Once again, if you try to go it alone, a disadvantage of going it alone is that you're one person and you might miss out on opportunities because you can't really clone yourself to do all that work. When you work with a firm, sometimes you can take on more projects simultaneously and be paid because you're not the only person doing all the work. But there's definitely a pro to going it alone because then you have the independence, you have the control, you have the flexibility. So it depends on your situation, where you are in life, your phase, and what would work best for you, right? Okay, let me try and get.
The other thing also, if I may add, is budget. When we're working with a larger organization, they might take the lion's share of the budget. And then since you are the lone consultant, that's where you need to negotiate. This is my hourly rate. This is what I'm going to do. So trying to understand the scope of work for you is really critical because you can get exploited. It has happened to the best of us. We tie up with these large organizations. They take the lion's share. They'll tell you that the contract really is only $50,000. Actually, in truth, it is $1 million. And they will only tell you half or, a quarter of the truth. And then they'll give you only 10,000. Exactly. And you'd end up doing 50,000 worth of work because you don't know any better. So it's a very fine balancing game that you play. And you just have to learn along the way as to, well, one, is it a good match for you? If you are really desperate for work, desperate for experience, and really want want that in your resume, go for it. Bite the bullet, go for it, and face the music later.
Yeah.
If not, just wait out, and maybe you'll get a better opportunity working with a set of consultants who are of the same mindset, and you will actually enjoy doing the work. The ultimate thing is, are you enjoying doing what you're doing?
And I would say if you're just branching out and you're new, I would say if you get opportunity to start with a firm, go for it. Take
Yeah,
the time to learn their tricks,
yeah,
learn how they do things. And then eventually, if you wish, you can go branch off on your own. That's also a suggestion. And speaking of
yeah.
budgets, Kaveta, you touched on it. Catherine wants to know, how do you know how much to charge as a new evaluator? How do I understand the financial value of my experience and skills?
I know. That's a webinar in itself, Anne. So, it's there's no one answer to it. There are different ways that I think both Anne and I have sort of figured it out, but we still struggle. So in consulting business, especially, I'll give you a few scenarios. Sometimes for the projects that are grant funded, you become a line item. You're a consultant, and you get paid lump sum. For instance, $5,000, and then you do a scope of work, a statement of work. You're going to do 5 or 6 tasks that require you to do formative and summative evaluation across a period of time. You call the shots and you say, well, I want to charge $10,000 because it is more or less equivalent to maybe 10 days of work, depending on where you are in terms of your seniority. With my experience, with Anne's experience, probably will say we charge about $125 per hour. For a new person, brand new emerging evaluator, you'll probably say, you're probably not at the $100 hour, but you set your own market rate in terms of you can ask a few people. How much do you charge? Is it an hourly rate or is it a lump sum? Now, the trick is really, how do you scope the work? For 5 days, in your own mind, you know how you work, how you pace yourself. Maybe it takes you a day or maybe a few hours, 7 hours or 6 hours of work to do a logic model. Then you can charge accordingly. So always try to break it down, because when you are presenting, especially budget, because that's a sensitive topic, that's where most of us, to the day, we lose contracts. Everything looks great. And when it comes to cost, they'll say, oh my God, you are too expensive. But when you break it down and you kind of justify that this amount, this work takes that much based on my market rate, then this work, if there is more scope, I mean, there's always a scope creep, then, I have to engage another staff member. So I'm estimating a site visit will take 2 days, and this is what we are charging. So you have to do a little back and forth dance with your client to say, well, this is what it is. The other thing is hourly rate. That's always a sticking point. I would say go with a range.
Yes.
Don't say I'm sticking with $70, $80. It becomes difficult, because then you give out the impression that you're not flexible and you just want $80. Otherwise, you're not going to work.
Yes. I support that wholeheartedly. I concur, give a range. And well, I'm based in Europe. Kaveta is based in the US. And the projects that I usually work on, we use daily rates. And I say the range for daily rates for a seasoned evaluator, M&E specialist, can range from a low of 450 euros per day to around 900 euros per day. But of course, the 900 up, that is top of the line, right?
Right.
So,
right.
And anywhere between 450 euros to 600 should be okay, right?
Exactly. And I would remove the travel.
Guys, by giving you something practical that you can work with.
Right. And, to also visually, here's a trick. What I do is I give them that lump sum amount or range. And what I do is I do not include travel per diem. So this is where you can negotiate. They will say that, well, we cannot pay you $1,000 to fly to, say, Tennessee, what we would do is you show us your ticket, you show us your, the charges that you incurred for your per diem hotel, and we will reimburse you. So that also helps. That way, you're not including 10,000 just randomly, saying that, oh, it's going to take that much money, because even you don't know how much it's going to take.
Yes.
So it makes nervous. It makes these clients nervous that they're charging too much for per diem or hotel charges and flight, all this economy. I mean, still. So some tricks there, yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Coretta. And Amanda wanted to add to Catherine's question, how do we determine what salary we should expect for entry-level jobs, like for folks with a master's degree and virtually no job experience?
Wow, that's a good question. Usually the jobs that I've applied, maybe 10, 15 years ago, starting out straight out of my master's in applied sociology, my first salary was probably at $55,000, but that's again 15 years ago. And I didn't have much of a choice to negotiate there because that was a set price, US dollars. And slowly, obviously, I worked my way up to 75, 80,000 within a few years. And then I opened my company because then I had an estimate. If I have to hire somebody with maybe 2 years of experience, they could also start off at maybe $55,000 and then work their way up.
Mm-hmm.
But it depends. Now, this where I worked was a for-profit, completely for-profit consulting firm. The non-profit organizations would probably not pay that much, at least in the US. From what I hear from my friends, they have started anywhere from 45 to 60, 50. So it's really all over the place. And I don't know if I can give you the right answer to this one.
Yeah, and what I would suggest, since we're all living on different continents, in different contexts, I would suggest watch your job listing post. Yeah. So whether you're on LinkedIn or you're on a job listing site, keep an eye on it for a couple of weeks or months to get an idea of the positions that are advertised that do indicate a salary, what's the going rate. And that can give you an idea of how much salary you should ask for or you can expect, right? That is what I would suggest, because we're all living in different places with different resources. So Kaveta can say one thing, I can give you a figure, but it might not be realistic, right?
Yeah.
All right, so going to our next question. This one is, I want to switch from an evaluation job to being an independent evaluator. But most requests for proposals require us to submit work samples. Since I cannot share work samples from my job, how can I deal with this issue?
Wow, that's see, that's why I was saying, like, try to have some side gigs, then you can have some side products. Well, that's a really good question. I would still ask your employer and say that, hey, I'm opening this side business, and instead of sharing the full report, how about they allow you to share maybe a data whiz that you did, maybe a policy brief, maybe the executive summary. And also, if you are new to the field and if you are out of grad school in the last 1 or 2 years, I would also include a sample of your writing from your grad school. How about maybe you published an article? Maybe you have a blog. I've known people who are always writing blogs, articles on LinkedIn, on Medium. And, there's just so many ways that you could do. Or if you have a poster presentation, why not? I mean, you can always say that this is some of my artifacts and some of my work products. The trick here is, even as a consultant, as a small business owner, although we have so many technical reports and we are not allowed to freely share, because contractually we are tied to the terms and conditions that the work products really belong to the clients. So each time when I have to pitch and I have to do an RFP and they want work samples, I have to seek permission.
Yes.
And I have to seek permission. And most of the time the clients are like, sure, why not? You have done such a great job. The product is good. Why not? And some of the times they will say no. especially with research universities. If you're working with large universities, they would say that no, the data belongs to us and we want to publish. So we cannot allow the evaluator to freely publicize the work. So they will put an embargo on the publication. And what they would say is, how about you only present, say, a statistical analysis that you did? Maybe you can do something on a methods. For instance, there was a client we had in Arizona, and they said, well, you can present on propensity score matching. We did a design paper for them, and they said, go ahead and publish it. Then the other person said, why don't you show your data viz? Because that's something that people are very interested in, and that will showcase your work, telling that you can do work in analytics, you can do work in mapping, heat mapping. So there are different ways of negotiating this.
Yeah, and I quite agree. I have the same challenge. I have my website, and
yeah,
I would like to show samples of my work on my website, which I have done.
Right.
But just ask permission from, like, what has helped me, because I've been working for myself for a while now. It really helps me if, like, my client has it publicly available, like report on their own website. That makes it easier for me to just click the link, just copy the link. But sometimes the reports are not publicly available, and of course it's their intellectual property. Then you can just ask them, and maybe if they're a little bit reluctant, then you say you can redact sections of the report so it doesn't give away anyone's identity, or just share the section that you worked on. But I know the challenge. If you're working for an employer, sometimes you don't even want them to know that you're going into consultancy to even ask them, oh, can I? So it is tricky. If you are in paid employment and your employer is not really open and flexible, and you don't want to let them know what you're doing, then it is tricky. I would say then try and build up your own portfolio. I like what you said, Kavita. Start blogging, write reports, even if nobody is paying you to. Do a research for yourself, right? Do an investigation, do an evaluation of something for yourself. No one has to commission it. You commission it yourself. Because the point is, people want to see your writing style and how your analysis. So I say, worst case, do an evaluation of the education system for yourself, put in your nice graphs, do everything in it, be open and transparent. This wasn't commissioned by anyone. It was just an investigation, maybe for school, for something, just so people can get an example of your writing style and how you think. Worst case, write your own blog, do your own research, and that should be able to help. Okay. Question on budget or your rates, Kavita. Do you have different rates for different clients, or is it standard?
Yes, I do. Sometimes I also do pro bono work just because, and then I beat myself for doing that. We all do that because the reason is sometimes you see potential in a client. I'll give you an example. Sometimes you feel that that client is onto something big. Just last week, I agreed to do work for $2,000, and then I couldn't sleep for 2 nights. Like, why did I say yes to the amount of work that is entailed and required of me? And then I realized that, this client is a university based, they are in rural community, and they are really hungry for bringing in grants in future. So if I give them some free work, if I extend myself and do work almost for free, they will see the potential and they will appreciate my expertise. That's the hope. It may not happen. But yes, the truth is sometimes I've agreed to do work for less, and sometimes it's just the joy of it. You like the work and money doesn't become that primary. You just enjoy the collegiality. You just enjoy working with the students. You enjoy the project. A small report comes out of it, and you just feel that pleasure that, wow, even for $2,000, a really nice report came. Another example, a small school district, they cater to homeless students. Now that's a cause. As an evaluator, we are not out in the field serving the students who are experiencing homelessness, but your way of service is that you're really looking into their problems. So they hired us to do a report for only $2,000. We said yes. I engaged another staff of mine. Both of us cranked out a report. And you know where it landed? It landed in the governor's office.
Mhm.
Did we know that it would go to the governor's office? No. A press release came out and we saw a name. Now, how do you put a price on that? You don't put a price on that. It's just the happiness and the gratitude that you know your work is appreciated. The short answer is yes, you have to sometimes agree to do less for a lot of work, and sometimes you have to say no because you know that that university is rich, they can afford, and they're just shortchanging you. And you have to negotiate. You have to say, no, I'm not going to do work for free, but here's the deal.
Yeah.
Here's how we negotiate.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks. I also have different rates because, like, for a upcoming NGO, where for me it's just
Yeah,
giving back. So
yeah.
I will come off my rates, just to facilitate that NGO. Okay. So Scott
Yeah.
is asking, he has seen requests for proposals that are so detailed. It's like you're doing the project upfront. They appear as if they want finished projects on speculation. He's thinking
Yeah.
that maybe they're fishing for results. Maybe they don't want to hire anyone. Do you have experiences with these type of requests for proposals? Is this
Yes.
typical, and what do you do in this case?
So I won't say it's typical. Sometimes it is typical too, because sometimes they don't know. So they expect you to. There have been instances, I think, in the group, I may have a few friends who are probably nodding their head. They're saying yes, 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 where we are asked to write pretty much the whole RFP on their behalf, and then they go and do a tender notice and open it to everybody. That has happened to me a couple of times.
Mhm.
The second is where they expect to write the research questions, come up with a logic model, a theory of change, and then you wonder, then what exactly am I evaluating here? So whenever there is this kind of tender notices, RFPs, sometimes they have pre-webinars, the pre-conference webinars. I think I would ask directly, what exactly is the intention of this? Because we are spending so much time and effort, what is going to happen in terms of when we write all this on your behalf?
Mhm.
So there's not always a malice attached to it. Sometimes they just don't know what they don't know. And then they just say, well, let's just go out in the wide open blue sky and see what happens. So as an experienced M&E specialist and as an evaluator, I think you can always ask questions. What does it mean? Does it guarantee work to me, or does it guarantee anything, or it is just an exploratory phase? If it's an exploratory phase, I would say just probably don't apply, because it's a wide open market. And why do you want to spend time knowing that those people obviously don't know what they're doing?
Okay. But how much time do you spend responding to requests for proposals, though? Like, for somebody who is going to start in the field,
Yeah,
is it
it has.
what can they expect? And just explain, maybe for persons who might not understand what the request for proposal is. Just first define
Yes,
it,
okay.
and then how much of your time do you anticipate having to do it to get gigs?
To get business. Okay, at least in the US context, what happens, Anne, is that school districts, universities, government agencies, non-government agencies, and foundations, they will put out this tender notice. So if they have an ongoing project or they have an initiative going on, they want somebody to do the analysis, do the evaluation, formative, summative evaluation, to understand if that intervention or initiative even is worth their effort. So they would put out this tender and they would expect in various websites. Eval Job is one of them. Then they have their own websites where, the marketplace where they would put this tender. They will give 15, 20 days to respond. Then there will be a Q&A session. That's the typical format. That's where you ask your questions, then they would respond, and then you decide whether you want to go ahead or not. So that's the main process. Now, over the years, what I have done really, Anne, is that my percentage of responding to the RFPs, the response for proposals, has really gone down. Earlier, I didn't have a lot of client base because I was chasing almost everybody. There's an RFP, let's go after it. If there is an RFP, let me contact Anne and see if she might be interested to partner with me. I was in that stage. But in the past 5, 7 years, I think the percentage and the proportion of RFPs that I have really responded to has probably gone down from, say, 80% to maybe 25%. The reason being that now I feel that I have those returning clients, universities, colleges, who keep coming back saying that we're applying for this grant and I don't think we need to rebid or we need to put it out. We will hire you as an evaluator as a returning client.
Mhm.
And I think that model somehow has worked for me. It may not work for the others. For bigger consulting agencies, you have to go and bid every 4 years, 5 years. But for me, at least for the National Science Foundation, US Department of Ed grants, my percentage has really gone down somehow. But what has really gone up is still working with these universities to write the grants, to apply the grants, because still they are also applying for grants from the federal agencies like the National Science Foundation. You still have to work with them to write the evaluation plan, to do the review. That has gone up tremendously. But my chasing after for new clients has really kind of gone down.
Okay. I've
Yeah.
experienced the same as well. Okay, guys, I know there's a feedback with my mic. Let me try. I've been trying to address it, but hopefully you're hearing me.
Yeah. I think you're fine now.
Okay. Um, what has aided me as I got more established in my
Yeah.
consultancy is I've had some really good long-term clients where I would have like a 5-year engagement. It's
Yeah.
like a 5-year project and they engage me for the 5 years. And I've had like 2 or 3 clients like that. And they know I'm a consultant, so I'm not in paid employment, but they keep my business afloat. And that cut down on my need to be chasing RFPs all the time. So I basically have like my 2, 3 long-term clients that I know pay my bills, take care of, run my business. And then everything else I do, I have the luxury, I feel very blessed
Yeah.
and privileged that at this stage in my business life, then I have the option to just do projects that I want to. So I don't have
Yeah.
to be chasing RFPs. These
Yeah.
days, when I do respond to an RFP, it's because I really like the scope of work
Right.
and it speaks to me. But it's
Right.
because I am hungry.
Yeah.
And I think in the beginning, I was hungry. So I would spend a lot of time writing these bids and the conversion rate. What is it like, Kaveta? Like you, well, back in my time, I would write maybe, if I write 10 RFPs, if I respond to that, maybe just one.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's about 35%. In my case, if you write 10, you'll probably get 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, again, you and I would laugh about this is that getting the work is one, but doing the work is another monster
Yes.
altogether.
Yes.
And then establishing that relationship. If you have an ongoing relationship, great. But if it's a new relationship, it's not only getting the work, but keeping the client.
Mm-hmm.
The client relationship, the budgeting and making sure that you don't piss them off or they don't piss you off, keeping a temperament about it. It's work.
Yes.
It's work, just not getting the work, but also keeping the work and maintaining it.
And this leads nicely into Jennifer's question, which is, what's the benefit of doing consultancies then? Why choose it over a typical full-time job?
Yeah. Everybody's life situation, Jennifer, is different. Some people choose consultancies because it suits them. You're on your own schedule. You're your own boss, so to speak, although you end up having many bosses because all your clients are your bosses. It depends on how you look at it. In my case, it was a kind of a transition. I did not choose to be a consultant and a small business owner. I was kind of referred by my CPA, the chartered accountant person, who said, you have the side gig going on. Why don't you open a small business and see how it goes? So once you open the business, again, it becomes your baby, and it depends on how you are raising that business as your own child. Where do you want to be in 4 years, 5 years? And in some cases, people with families, young children, it's very hard to just not have a full-time job, but be there with your family, taking care of elders, taking care of children. So maybe you can choose depending on your own personal situation. Some of my friends, the husbands, the spouses, they have a very well paying job, so they can take the risk of going independent. So they take small contracts, they do the work at their own time schedule, they enjoy family life, they don't work overtime. And you have the luxury of saying no. Like Anne said, you have the luxury of saying no, that no, this really kind of hinders my family life, or it's something extra that they're asking me for a few $100s. It's not worth my time.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are in a full-time job, sometimes you don't have the luxury. If you have a really crummy, really bad client, you just have to suck it up
Mm-hmm.
and just be there, deal with it because you're required to, because you're a salaried person.
Yes.
So there's no one answer to that, Jennifer. We all have to make decisions about our own life and see what works.
Yes, yes. Like for me, Jennifer, I love the freedom. Um, like when I was in paid employment, it's the politics, the
Mhm.
dynamics,
Yeah,
working for maybe someone
yeah,
wherein like I have my ideas on how to do things. I just love the freedom in that you know who Anne Brown is, you know my style, you know my brand, you know what I represent, and you come to me because you like my way of doing things or not. So I love the freedom, the money too. I mean, I earn far more now than I did when it was paid. I like the flexibility in
yeah,
that I'm not tied to 9 to 5. I work harder now than I did when it was paid employment, but guess what? It doesn't feel like work to me. Me working 7 days a week when I want it, it's I work more hours, but it's more liberating. It gives me energy because I'm doing what I love. I like if it's nice weather. I'm here in the Netherlands. We hardly get many sunny days. So if it's a sunny day, I like the flexibility that I can go by the beach. If I was paid
right.
employment, I may have to ask for the day off, and then I might hear, no, you can't.
Yeah,
Right? So I like that. And I like, even recently, I was in the final stages of negotiation with a client, and it didn't sit well with me. And I like the
yeah,
flexibility that I could say, you know what? Um, Actually, I don't think we should go ahead.
right,
And I like
right.
that feeling. If I was working for a company, I couldn't just say, no, I'm not going to do this piece of work today. It's not sitting right with me. They would be like, they fire me again. Fire me. Anyway, yeah. So that's the pros. The cons, though, of consultancy, it is hard work.
Yeah, yeah,
And if you're someone that like you need the stability, paid employment is good because it's a standard paycheck coming in
yeah,
and you can sign off. I can never just turn off my computer and just say, oh, I'm not working. I always have to keep an eye on my emails. I'm always working 7 days a week,
yeah,
even
yeah,
waking up, checking, right? So it depends on where you are, your life stage. If you want the stability of a regular income and you can go on vacation and know nobody's going to bother you, then paid employment has its advantages and its perks.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. And in the US, at least in the US context, when you're a consultant, you also have this health insurance, the retirement and all those things. Your employer will take care of them. But when you're on your own, you have to count literally every penny and making sure that you have enough for retirement. You're putting some money aside for, untoward medical emergencies. So you are really on your own, literally, when you're a consultant. So those things, again, depending on your own health issues, your own family situations, your financial conditions,
Mhm.
um, yeah, work it out, and talk to your talk to your CPA before you open, because they would know, also your financial advisor, they would know in terms of your health, the health of your wealth.
Yeah.
and figure it out. Yeah.
Mhm. And here's a question now, talking about how do you navigate negotiating pay as women of color? I work in a humanitarian setting, and I find that white men tend to easily get offered extraordinary high rates, whereas I'm struggling to cover my living costs. The
Yeah.
organizations often tell me they don't have the more money to pay me higher rates.
Yeah. Now that unfortunately is the truth. And as a woman of color myself, I feel that I'm shortchanged, and truthfully, I don't have an answer. It's a struggle. It is infuriating. It's frustrating when you have to constantly prove yourself. I mean, I'm here with an established business, and yet almost every other day I'm pitching. I'm telling them my story. I'm telling them I'm worth the money. And it's just frustrating. Sometimes it's just soul crushing that, wow, I have to prove myself every other day. While on the other hand, maybe another person who is, not a person of color is just getting away with fewer qualifications or maybe doesn't have much to show. But unfortunately, that's the truth and that's the reality we are living in. All of us have our struggles, all of us have our stories. And sometimes, once I received a letter of rejection, it's unbelievable. To this day, I feel, why did I not tweet it out? Because that would have caused an uproar. I just store it up. The letter of rejection told me that, Dr. Mitapalli, thank you for your response to the RFP. We found somebody more suitable who understands our student population, and you are not one of them.
Oh,
To this day, I don't understand what that meant. And then I realized that it was a rural, pretty much all white community. And pretty much what they stated was it was a racist attack. It just basically said that we are not inclusive, you are not one of us. And to this day, I feel that why did I not save that letter and tweet so that people will know how it feels,
yes.
that how you treat others.
Mhm.
We are here in the field of education, we are here for students, everybody. And yet you feel that I'm not qualified enough to understand your student population. It's ridiculous, but that's the truth. That's the hard truth that we are living every day. And I don't want to be this activist saying that it's going to go away in the next 1 year, 2 years. I don't think it will that easily. It's only sometimes gets worse
Mhm.
because we cannot sometimes change people's perception. It's how they are. But will you still stop trying? Never. You have to try, you have to ask, you have to say no. And I think I'm getting better at saying no. I will not do this work for free, or I will not do this for this much, because I know my talents, I know my expertise, and I can do so much more than what I'm being appreciated for.
Yes, yes. I'm sorry to hear of your experiences, Kavita. It's very unfortunate that you had to go through that. I've had similar experiences as well. I migrated to Europe a little over 10 years ago, and I could write a book
Yeah.
on some of the experiences I've had. But what it has done, though, it has
Yeah.
really helped me to grow as a person
Yeah.
and my brand, to be honest, because I encountered so many closed doors
Yeah.
here in Europe. Um, and at one point, I said, you know what? I'm going to sell my services anywhere in the
Yeah.
world that they want me.
Exactly.
I'm not going to restrict myself to a particular organization or a particular country or a particular continent. Whoever sees value in what I
Yes.
do,
Yeah.
I'm available. And that was the motivational, that was the thrust behind why we're even having the webinar today.
Yeah.
And with all so many persons online right now from different regions of the world, it's because I made the conscious decision that I
Yeah.
will not be muzzled. I've had so many opportunities, so many doors closed, and it's usually under the guise of, oh, sorry, but you don't necessarily fit our organizational culture. I've had it several times, and sometimes I've had to submit a proposal 3, 4 times
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
wonder, would somebody else have to submit it 4 times and go on 4 different interviews? That every time it's little
Right.
things like, oh, change this little paragraph, and then to the end to still hear, yeah, we decide that you wouldn't necessarily be a good organizational fit.
Wow.
Yes, so
Yeah, basically,
unfortunately,
they have basically decided in their mind. They're just playing the game.
yes.
That we did our due diligence, but we've already decided who we want to go with.
Yeah, and I would say to anyone, it's unfortunate it's going to be with us. I would say just focus on becoming the best professional you can be, and tell
Yeah,
yourself that whoever value you will pay you. If that
exactly.
organization doesn't pay you what you're worth, take your services elsewhere, and the
Exactly.
persons who recognize your work, they will pay you. Right? And
Yeah.
don't lose too much energy over that, and don't be discouraged by that. Anyhow, I'm looking at the time. I see we have a little time left, and I want to get in our recommendations, resources for persons to do further reading. What is
Oh
your
yes.
go-to book that you can recommend, Kavita?
Um, there's not one go-to book, but there is one good book that I read a couple of years ago, and I would highly, highly recommend. And I hope you can see the full title,
Mhm.
"The Consultant with Pink Hair" with Cal Harrison. And the whole premise of this book really is that at some point we have to stop chasing the RFP business, and we have to concentrate on the value proposition as consultants, as small businesses. So this whole book talks about a case study as to how these two consultants were on the verge of closing their business because they were constantly chasing the response to proposals, tender notices, and at some point they had to say, hey, look, stop. We need to re-strategize. We need to see how we can grow without losing the contracts that we have, but enhancing what we have. So it's a really nice read. It talks like a story, and you will associate yourself as if they are speaking to you because you will find yourself in their shoes. So that's a good book to read. It's an easy read, so I would highly recommend that.
Okay, great. And my resource is Consulting Startup and Management by Gail Barrington. I mean,
Nice.
anyone who's interested in starting their consultancy in monitoring and evaluation, definitely get a copy of the book. It takes you through the entire process. And for persons who are interested in learning more about Kaveta, I was trying to share my screen, but I put her website in the chat box. You can check her out. I'll do it again here. It's www.mnassociatesinc.com. Read all about Kaveta and her blogs. The information is there. And thanks to everyone
Thank you.
who took the time today. Any last words, Kaveta, before we sign off?
Oh, don't give up. Don't ever give up. There is always help. We are also there. There are people who have walked before you, and there will be people who are walking behind you. Uh, you know, uh, don't give up hope. It's good work. Think about what you are here for. You're here for the work and not necessarily always the money. Money will follow. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And give value. Give value and the money will follow. Indeed, I concur. And just to say that there will be a recording of this session, so you will get it, guys. And we will read the comments that you left in the chat. I see there were a lot of interactions going on there. So we'll definitely read them and follow up. I
Awesome.
you will not get an email from me because of privacy rules. I am not allowed to send you emails, but you will get the recording. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon, morning, evening, night, wherever in the world you are. Until
Enjoy. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
bye.